everyone, welcome back to another video, or welcome if you are new to my channel. I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas and a lovely time over the holidays if you celebrate, and if you don't celebrate then I hope you were able to take that time for yourself, to take extra care of yourself and show yourself a little extra love. Today I've got a small collection of creepy, festive, true stories. So 3 are Christmas stories, things that happened on Christmas, and 3 are New Year's Eve events, occurrings. So this might not be the longest video, but hopefully it will still be very relaxing for you. So let's start with story number 1, which is called Creepy Christmas Present. Last night was Christmas Eve. Since I'm the oldest sibling, I'm forced to play Santa and lay all of the presents underneath the tree at exactly 2 AM. I've done this every year since I was 16, so I'm pretty used to this job. After my dad and I finished wrapping the last things that go in the stockings, we went to bed. I usually lie in bed until 1:50 AM, because if I set an alarm for 2, I might wake my sisters up. So I was on my phone, scrolling through social media, watching YouTube, all that kind of stuff. Well, 1:30 comes around and I'm getting ready to get out of bed and grab all the presents from the basement where the gifts are hidden. I start lugging the gifts upstairs, unload them, and then go lay down. A few hours later, we all wake up and begin unwrapping presents. We were almost done when my younger sister began to cry. We asked her what's wrong, and she kept repeating, "Santa hates me, Santa hates me." We're all extremely confused. She then points to the most recent present she just opened, and we all look. The china doll that Santa bought her was empty. All that was there was the empty box. Now, this doll was in a plastic box, you know, the kind you have to cut open. And I know this because I was the one who wrapped the present. I look at my parents, and all 3 of us are just kind of trying to ask who took the doll without saying that in front of the younger kids. After the whole doll fiasco, we just decided to buy a new one and then pretend that Santa accidentally dropped it outside when flying to the top of thought she had played a merry trick, but soon a sense of unease fell over the guests. The bridegroom, Lord Lavelle, was distraught, and guests began to whisper that she must have fled. Days, weeks, months, and years passed, and Lord Lavelle never stopped looking for his bride. One day, some 50 years after her disappearance, Lord Lavelle was up in the huge attic of the sprawling mansion, where he began tapping on the oak panelling. As he knocked, a long-hidden secret door sprung open, and inside he found an ornate wooden chest. He pried open the heavy wooden lid, and there, still in her wedding dress and clutching her mistletoe bouquet, were the skeletal remains of his beloved. The scratch marks on the inside of the lid of the chest attested to her desperate but futile effort to free herself from her hiding space. That's very sad and very scary to get locked in a chest and no one can hear you. Be careful where you choose to hide. This final Christmas one is called My Scary Christmas Story. This story takes place 4 years ago and it still haunts me to this day. It was Christmas night and my family were driving home from this fancy restaurant. I, unlike my family, wasn't tired, so the 45-minute drive seemed perpetual. On top of that, my little sister was constantly moaning about how her friend didn't get her anything for Christmas. After about 20 minutes of driving, my dad stopped at a gas station to get some cigarettes, and my sister, brother, and mother all got out to pee. I stayed in the car, as I had already gone before we left. Once they all left, I decided to play a few games on my phone. I looked at the car clock and saw that 10 minutes had passed, so I started wondering what was taking them so long. As soon as I peered out the car window, I saw a man staring at our car. The man startled me, as I didn't know how long he had been watching. What made it even more unnerving is that he had a plain blank face. No expression was shown. It was hard to make out any features as it was pretty dark and he wasn't standing in an illuminated part of the station. He was about 5'9" and looked to be middle-aged. Once he saw me notice him, he started walking towards the car. And I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't scared. Luckily, my dad came back with the rest of the family just as the man took a couple of steps. My dad apologized and told me he had been in an argument with the cashier. I didn't care. I was just glad that my dad was with me. I took another glance at the man outside and he was still staring, but this time he had an annoyed look on his face. We drove off, and for the rest of the car ride, I couldn't stop thinking about that man. This wouldn't have been too bad if it had ended here, but it didn't. Later that night, I was watching YouTube while everyone else slept, and luckily for me, a storm was raging over us. I enjoy storms. It makes me cozy as I'm lying in bed. I put my phone down and just enjoyed the ambience. That didn't last for long, as I heard something smash into the window behind me. I lurched forward and nearly fell out of the bed. I thought a bird had just smashed into the window. I parted the blinds, and what I saw next haunted me. I saw a man standing up on my parents' car, looking up at my room. I took a closer look and I nearly had a heart attack. It was the same man that I saw at the gas station, only this time, when our eyes met, He grinned. Being the 14-year-old I was, I did the manly thing and screamed at the top of my lungs. My dad came running down the stairs and entered my room. "Why the fuck are you screaming?" he said. I told him about the man and I explained everything that had happened. My dad grabbed a baseball bat and told me to call the police. After 10 minutes, the police turned up outside our house and found the man in our shed. He got arrested and that was the last time I saw him. The next day, my dad inspected the house and we found the handle of our back door had been damaged, but not completely broken. This gives me an eerie feeling, as if he actually managed to get in, he could have harmed us or possibly killed us. Okay, now for the first New Year's Eve creepy story, which is called The Creature on New Year's Eve. So, I had a very strange thing occur late in the evening on New Year's Eve. I'd been out at a party, drinking and smoking a bit, as is customary. At around 2:30, a few friends, I'll use their nicknames, Mads, Thar and Max, and I left the party we were at and headed back to our town. We had kept the roach of a blunt from the party and decided to pull into the resident parking lot outside the condo complex I live in to finish it off. Not 2 minutes after we spark it, a man comes stumbling up the road that runs through the parking area. This road, for reference's sake, runs through the parking area and down a hill to a few houses. I know pretty much all the people who live down that small hill. The man didn't really perturb me or my friends, so we kept smoking. Then a minute later, a high school girl wearing no shoes or socks and just a short, skimpy dress comes walking up the hill. At this point I was starting to wonder what kind of weird party was going on at one of my neighbours' houses. The girl walked through the parking area without a word, and then turned onto the main street and headed up it. At first we assumed we wouldn't bother worrying because, despite her lack of shoes, she was walking straight and seemed to be keeping to herself. That's when things got strange. After she had disappeared from sight up the street, she came bolting back down as fast as she could given her shoeless situation. When she reached my friends and I, she slowed down but looked very spooked. Mads asked her what had happened and she stepped away from her at first. Then, with horror-stricken eyes, she pointed up the main street. We all turned and looked, but there was nothing in our direct line of sight. Max and I decided we'd go up the street to investigate what was scaring this girl so much. We made sure Thar, Mads and the girl got in Thar's car and locked it. Max and I went up the main street, and for 5 minutes we saw nothing. Then we passed under the one street light on the upper portion of the street. This street light had a stubborn and nerve-wracking tendency to turn off once you pass under it. To my dismay, it turned off, leaving us in total darkness, save for the faint glow of a light at the end of someone's driveway. This light was very low to the ground. That's when we saw it. Something that looked like a naked person but wasn't quite human waddled down the street towards us. It moved as though it were half squatting, and because of this, its hands dragged along the ground as they hung limp at its sides. I couldn't make out its face, and Max told me later that he couldn't either. It was also making a throaty, gurgling noise, as if it was almost choking on something. All we could do in the moment was turn and run as fast as we could back down the street. I ran right into my house, and Max ran to Thar's car. car screeching out of the parking area. I locked the door and didn't even bother to look outside to see if the thing was still coming down the street. That person's very brave to go back to the house on their own. I think I'd stick with my friends at that point. Okay, this second story is called The New Year's Eve Haunting. When I was around 12, I spent New Year's Eve at my friend's house whilst our parents went out to a restaurant in a nearby town. The house was old and pretty isolated, and to be honest, scared the crap out of me. You had to drive up a long, overgrown track to reach it. A lot of my other friends at school would say the house was haunted, and it was actually featured in a ghost book, if I remember rightly. So anyway, we're sat downstairs in the lounge watching some TV and heard the loudest crashing sound. I still remember the look in my friend's eyes when we turned to each other in shock. It took us a while to get up and actually go and investigate what the sound was. We crept out of the lounge, down the hallway to the rest of the house. The crashing sounded like it came from upstairs, so we headed up to check it out. When we got to the top of the stairs, there was a breeze coming from somewhere. It was cold, like ice cold. We moved down the hallway, upstairs towards the wind, and turned to go down another corridor. Bear in mind, this house was massive. Honestly, it was near enough a mansion from the early 1920s. At the end of the corridor was his mum and dad's bedroom. The door was moving back and forward slowly. We both stopped and just stood still, frozen, not saying a word to each other. After a moment, my friend walked towards the door. I was still frozen in fear and fell behind a little. As he pushed the door open and snuck into the room, the darkness consumed him, and I could barely make out his silhouette. There was perfect silence for a couple of seconds before I heard him let out the most terrifying scream. My adrenaline kicked in, and I ran towards the room to see what had happened. I searched for the light and turned it on. He was stood, frozen, stiff and pale, just staring into an empty corner of the room. Just to the side of him was a massive antique mirror that was smashed into pieces and scattered all over the floor. I placed my arm on his shoulder and asked him if he was okay. She broke the mirror. I asked him who broke it, and he said, "The woman in the corner. She told me." At that point, I was honestly like, fuck this, and I told him we should leave. He turned to leave with me, but just before we did, I wanted to check the mirror. Surely the wire had broken or something, I thought to myself. I bent down to the mirror and turned it over. The string that was holding it to the wall was intact. It hadn't snapped. I looked at the wall. The nail was still firmly fixed in place. At that point, I was so terrified. I told him to ring his parents and tell them to come home. We waited outside the front door until our parents arrived back from the restaurant. My dad and his went straight up to the bedroom when they got back to check it out and saw the broken mirror. They sort of shrugged it off and said that we were up to no good and playing a game that got out of hand. After that night, my friend never really spoke about it to me. The worst part is, recently, I'm 24 now, I was having a general chat with my mum, and as New Year is coming up, that night came up. I told her about it and she said, "I believe you. Your friend's mum told me a few days after that night that she'd seen a woman in her room telling her to leave the house." It honestly sent my whole body tingling, and I had flashbacks to that night, although it's coming up to almost 12 creepy to happen at 12 years old. And the final New Year's Eve story is called My Eerie Start to 2012. I didn't have much planned on New Year's Eve. My friend Aaron was having a family party, so he invited me and 2 other friends to join in. Me, Aaron, Nat, and Anthony are chilling in his basement. At around 9:30, Aaron gets a text from a number he doesn't recognize. It says, "Yo, I'm outside." So he goes outside to check and finds that no one's there. He comes down and asks if we have that number in our phones, and none of us do. A little while after, Nat gets a text from the same number. It says, "Yo, I'm outside." She replies, "Where are you?" And then she gets a text back saying, "Turn around." We were all in the basement together and clearly no one was behind her. So we figured that someone was trying to prank us. At around 10:45, I get the text, "Yo, I'm outside." Same number. So now I'm really curious and I want to figure out who this person is. I text back, "Alright, I'm coming out." I promptly get a text back saying, "I'm already inside." Fast forward to 12:10. We're upstairs with everyone else, watching the NBC New Year's show. I decide to text this person, "Happy New Year, love you, XOXO." I did this just to get some sort of reaction, hoping they'd reveal themselves. But I got no reply until around 1 AM, and I'm sitting on my friend's couch playing games on my phone. It said, "I'm waiting by your car." I didn't think too much of it. I just text back, "What's my license plate number?" It took a few minutes to get a reply which said, "You drive a Honda, right?" Big deal. Lots of people drive Hondas. At around 1:30, I'm putting on my shoes to leave and I get another text. "I'm ready to leave now. Are you?" Now, I can't lie, that was a timely text, so I got a little rattled. But I put on my shoes and went out the door. I had to drop off Anthony and Nat, so we walked to my car, and before going in, I checked the back seats and the surrounding area. Nothing in sight. We get in the car. Here's where things get creepy. Now, I could have made a 3-point turn and drive out the way I came in, but I was too lazy to reverse. I drove straight, thinking that I knew the area well enough to make the proper turns to get out. I ended up making a right turn prematurely, and I quickly realized I'd made a wrong turn. My phone vibrated in my jacket pocket, and I got a text. "You're going the wrong way." I was shook. I stopped on the side of the road. I wasn't lost or anything. I just made the wrong turn. I stayed put until a couple of cars passed me. I turned to the back seat and asked if Nat or Anthony were playing around, and they said they have no idea what's going on. So I tried to put that behind me and continue driving. We come to a stop sign, where we have to make a turn onto the main road. Anthony's house is on the left. I decide to turn right. As I'm driving, Anthony says, "What the hell are you doing?" I tell him, I just want to see what happens. I drive about 1 kilometer up and turn into an empty parking lot in a plaza. I do a big circle and then come out the way I came in. I'm a little relieved at this point, so I pull out and head towards Anthony's house, and then my pocket vibrated again. Stop with the detours, I'm still here. I was shook. I turned off my phone and left it at that. I didn't drive all the way home. I asked if I could chill at Anthony's for a bit, but I ended up sleeping over. sound silly, but friends don't really text like that. People who I've told the story to have always tried to call the number, but they get a message saying that the number doesn't exist. That is really creepy. But I feel like I would have been calling this number so much over the course of the evening with my friends and been like, who is this? You know, I don't think I'd ignore it as much as these guys. It would have freaked me out too much. Anyway,